Hey y'all, welcome back. If you're new around here, my name is Katie Marie and I like to talk about eyeshadow palettes, and if you're not new around here, you might remember me doing this type of video last year. So at the end of, or at the beginning of last year, 2022, I took all of the palettes that I tried during 2021, and during the year I had reviewed half of them, like all the palettes that I tried over the 6 months. That way I just broke up the year so it wasn't overwhelming at the end of the year to rank them all. But I took those two halves, and at the beginning of 2022, I battled the year 2021 out, the beginning and the end half, just to see which palette came out on top. Was it the palettes I tried at the beginning? Was it the palettes I tried at the end? And it was also just fun to see how like which palettes I had to compete against each other, because as I got to the top, they were my favorite and I had to pick a favorite between those two. So anyway, with that video, I had a great time doing it. You guys really enjoyed it and I definitely wanted to continue doing that. So that is what we are doing today. I took all of my palettes from the year 2022, all the palettes I tried, put them in the groups where I ranked them in the beginning half of the year and the latter half of the year, and now we're going to take them and battle them out together and see which one ranks on top. And as I always say in the videos, leave it in the comments down below. Which do you think is going to win with the most palettes? Do you think the palettes I tried at the beginning of the year are going to win out over the end of the year? Or do you think the end of the year is going to win out over the beginning of the year? And I think it's very interesting, the 2 years that I've done this, I think I've tied every time, because I'm always like, oh yeah, the beginning of the half was so good, that's going to win. Or the end of the year was so good, that's going to win. And then both times it tied, like literally the same number. Tied. So this year I'm gonna give my guess. I really do think the end of the year for 2022 is gonna win out over the beginning of the year. And let's hope it's not a tie this year, because 3 years in a row with a tie, that would be something. So anyway, that's what we're doing today. Let's go ahead, do the new intro, because I always like to do a new intro for the year. Let me roll my new intro and we can get right into it. Okay, so before we get into comparing them, I do want to mention a couple of the palettes that I'm not going to be including in this countdown, because I tried more palettes at the end of 2022 than I did at the beginning. And those palettes are going to be the I Heart Revolution and Shrek palette, this palette right up here, and I'm not going to be including the Fantasy Cosmetica Bard palette, and then also I'm not going to be including the Wicked Widow Y'alternative palette. But all the other palettes, these two, they just don't have anything to compete, because I didn't try that many at the beginning of the year. 2022, at the beginning of the year, was a little bit busy. I was very nauseous and sick and I just didn't try many palettes. So these are just going to be set to the side because I can't battle them out with anything, but they were at the bottom of my countdown. So let's go ahead and start at the beginning of the year for the 2022. I don't even have it anymore. That's how much I enjoyed it. But it's going to be the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette. And I ended up just selling this on my Mercari, but I'll put a picture here. And that's going to battle against the latter half of the year when I tried the new Midas MYDAS Cinti palette. Now this is pretty tricky, because I wasn't super thrilled with the formula of the Lunar Beauty. Like the mattes were just okay and the shimmers are just alright. And then this palette also, the mattes are okay. At least they're colorful. I feel like that's winning out over the Lunar Beauty. But the shimmers were really pretty. So I think thinking about that, it's colorful and the shimmers were nice, especially these two really like wet looking ones on the lid. They were really pretty. So I'd pick the Cinti palette as the winner, and the Lunar Beauty, it doesn't win. Next up is going to be, once again, LA Girl Festy Bestie. I sold this on my Mercari as well, and that is going to go against the Clarity Cosmetics Evil Mermaid palette. So picture over here, Evil Mermaid over here. Ooh, this is a tough one. Oh, let me make sure. It's really pretty, but it's very flaky, or just a soft pressed type of shadow. I wouldn't say flaky. It's very finely milled, but it just makes a mess very easily. I feel like I'm always like got crumbs everywhere, and whenever I use it, I just have sparkle all over. But anyway, I'm going to have to give it to the Evil Mermaid. Even though I think this is a bit messy when it comes to the shimmers, they're very pretty when you use them. I can't deny how beautiful they are on the lid, like just so much sparkle and stunningness. And it's just a fun color story, whereas the Festy Bestie, the shimmers I think I remember being okay, but the mattes are really, you know, not there, and it was very kind of neutral and subdued. Even this picture, I have a feeling it's going to be more saturated than the actual palette was, because when I bought it on Ulta, and the picture I saw with the palette that I got felt very different, like a lot more desaturated than the what I saw on Ulta Beauty. So yeah, again, the latter half of the year has to win here, because this, at least, you know, yes, it's a hassle to apply just because it makes such a mess, but it is beautiful. Okay, next up is going to be, for the first half of the year, is the Flawless Cosmetics Tropical Paradise palette, which looks like this, and that's battling against the Nomad Santa's Village palette. Ooh, this is really hard, because I really did enjoy the intenseness of these shimmer shadows. Like, they look really pretty on the eyes. They're very difficult to get on the eyes, however, but I do really like the matte formula. But the mattes weren't super inspiring. Whereas on this, overall, I felt like the quality was nice and fine. It just didn't blow me away, but it's colorful. The only thing missing for me from this palette really is that there was no deep tones. Like, black would have been great just because you could mix that into whatever color you wanted, but at least like a really deep blue or really deep purple to play with this. I really did miss the depth, but at least it's got color. And even though the shimmers didn't blow me out of the water, they were nice shimmers, and the pigmentation of the mattes were nice too. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it to the Flawless Cosmetics Tropical palette. So first win for the beginning half of 2022. All right, next is going to be the Ace Beauté Nostalgia palette for the beginning half, and that's battling against the NBA Pumpkin Kisses and Autumn Wishes palette. Ooh, this is a little tricky because I do remember enjoying the creativeness I could have with the Nostalgia palette. The formula was just fine if I remember correctly, but this one, the shimmers are very, like, they're a little bit more subdued, or not subdued, but they're a little more neutral, but they're very, very pretty, and the, you know, mattes in here were really nice to apply as well. There's more creativity here and intensity to this as well. Like the Nostalgia palette, I remember like the orange and the pink just being almost neon. Like there's a lot more intensity, but I feel like if I'm like sitting here trying to decide when I would create a very fall-esque look, because these are both pretty similar in that giving you a fall-esque look, I feel like I love the shimmers in this one more. They just were a little bit more stunning on the lid, whereas these were nice in the Ace Beauté, but they didn't blow my socks off. So I think I'm going to give it to the NBA Cosmetics. I really did enjoy that palette, and I love a good autumn look. So with this, you know, it's also pink and purple, which I'm not super into. I'm just trying to make myself better about not picking this, but I'm going to have to pick the NBA one. Next to battle is going to be the Playing and Makeup by Yolanda Expressions palette. For the first half of the year, and the latter half, it's going against the Unearthly in the Dark palette. Ooh, this is going to be hard because I enjoyed them both, but it's also going to be easy because I love the depth in here and the intensity of these shadows. That blue is amazing, and this one I did really enjoy it. It lacked a little bit of creativity for me because the shades are so similar. Like, it's just a very monochromatic little palette, and this one you don't have that monochromaticness issue, and it's bigger, so you could do more. I do like the shimmers more in the Playing and Makeup by Yolanda. Even though the Unearthly is fine, it's pretty, but if I had to pick a favorite, it's definitely Playing and Makeup by Yolanda. But I'm gonna have to give it to the Unearthly Cosmetics because this palette it was really good. All right, next up for the beginning half of the year is DD Signatures, the Neutral Wonder palette. I miss DD Signatures. And then the latter half of the year is the Gourmande Girls Ethereal palette. Ooh, the formulas of these are a little bit like the intensity that they show on the eyes are very similar when it comes to the shimmers. Obviously, this isn't all shimmer palette, but they do really remind me of DD Signatures shimmers. But I'm gonna have to give it to the Ethereal because as much as I did enjoy this palette, it just was a little too limiting for me with the mattes. And this palette, it's all shimmers, but at least there was a lot of variety, and I really did enjoy playing with this palette. I had a fantastic time with it, and I just really enjoy it, and it's a great like all shimmer palette if you want to expand your shimmers in your collection. It had a lot of great shimmers that were very different from each other. It didn't feel like they were all the same shade or just different shades of pink, that type of thing. So gonna go with the latter half. You guys, I hope you voted down below which you think is gonna win, beginning half or latter half. Like I said, I think the latter half because I just remember so many awesome palettes, and so far it's holding out. I only got one for the beginning. Next up is going to be the Flight Club palette from Menagerie Cosmetics that I tried at the beginning half of 2022, and that's battling against the Gourmande Girls Spooked palette that I tried at the end of 2022. So here's what they both look like, and again, I feel a little bit bad. I'm not into purple, you guys know this, so it probably comes as no surprise that I would pick the Spooked palette over the monochromatic purple palette. Not to say that the formula of this palette was bad at all. I thought the shimmers and mattes were beautiful, but it's just a very monochromatic purple palette that I'm not super into. And with this, there's so much creativity. The formula isn't anywhere near up to the Menagerie formula when it comes to mattes and shimmers, honestly. Like, I feel like this has got a great formula, but this is where I'm just gonna prefer, at least I can be very creative, even if I mean, not to say that the formula is bad at all. Like, I thought that the formula was fine, but definitely doesn't hold a candle to this formula. It's just so smooth and beautiful, but it works well enough, and I got I got a beautiful eye looks with it very easily, so I'm not mad at the formula at all, but the creativity that I got with this palette definitely has to win out, so Spooked palette it is. Beginning half of 2022, I tried the DD Signatures, the Pumpkin Spice palette, which I really did like. I obviously dropped it though, and the dark green is cracked. That is going against the Shroud and Batty Bean Hallow Bean palette. Ooh, this is tough. Let's see. I really do like this color story. It's like just fall in a little 4-pan quad nutshell, but the formula of this is so good, and you do get creativity, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and give it to the Shroud, even though it was a little limiting for me when it came to the variety or the amount of looks I could do that I was very inspired to do. I definitely got a few looks out of this that I absolutely loved. I was so inspired by, and I loved wearing it, and the formula is just so good, so gonna give it to the Hallow Bean. Next up for the first half is the Heather Austin Adept palette, or the Adept Heather Austin palette, my bad. And that's going to go against the Impress Me Colors of the World, the collab palette with Doodles by the Bunny. Funny, both of them are collab palettes. That's too funny. Let's see. This is going to be easy and hard at the same time. I always feel bad. Oh, this broke. I'm going to hold it like this because I don't want to put eyeshadow all over my carpet. This is, I think I'm going to go with the colorful eyeshadow. Though I love these tones when it comes to the mattes. It's like green and mustard and then a brown and a dark purple. I love those tones when I was creating eye looks, and then there was a lot of shadows in here that I really liked. I especially like the multi-chrome shadows in this palette. So there's a lot I liked about it, even though some of the shades I wasn't the biggest fan of. And honestly, it was 2 that I really didn't like, and then 3 of them that were just meh. You know, they were okay. They didn't blow my socks off. So the majority of this palette, or at least half of the palette, I really did like. And then this palette was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it. The shimmers are nowhere near Adept quality, and definitely, like, if I had to pick which shimmer I enjoyed out of this palette, like, yes, there are some shimmers I didn't like, but there's a lot of shimmers I liked out of here. Comparing against this, I would pick these shimmers, and there's multi-chromes for more fun. But I do like the creativity I was able to get with all the color, but there wasn't any depth in here, which was a really big bummer. So it kind of makes me think I should go with this palette because I love the depth I could get with it. This battle is very equal because there's aspects out of both of these palettes that I really didn't like, and there's aspects out of both of these palettes that I really did like. And maybe I'm just in a very dark and wintry fall type of vibe still, but I think I'm going to go with the Adept palette because I just love these type of fall-esque tones. I enjoyed them so much. The multi-chromes were a lot of fun, like I said. So as much as I love a good colorful rainbow, I'm going to go with this one. First half of 2022, I tried the What's Up Geodes palette. This palette was a very neutral palette, but a lot of fun, and there's so much intensity with their mattes. That's going to go against the latter half of the year, the Sigma Alice in Wonderland palette. Ooh, this is going to be interesting, because when I'm talking about formula, I think for mattes and shimmers, I prefer the What's Up Beauty. The formula was just, not to say that the Sigma Beauty doesn't have a good formula. Their matte formula is definitely kind of right on par there. They're very similar. They're both very good, but the shimmer formula in this, majority of them, I was just kind of like, eh, that's okay. So the shimmer formula in the What's Up Beauty definitely trumps the Sigma, but the color story of this intrigues me a little bit more than this palette. So that's where I'm like, do I want to vote on quality here or the type of looks that I got to create? Ooh, I think I'm gonna go with the looks that I could create, because just looking at these 2 palettes, remembering all the looks I created with this one, I'm going to give it to the Alice in Wonderland palette because I really did enjoy the type of looks that I got from this palette. The Colored Rain Wealthy Chick palette came in at the beginning of the year, or chic, I forget how you pronounce that word. This one is what I tried during the first half of the year, and that is battling against the latter half, the Nomad Hudson Valley palette. Oh, these are both very different in that this is colorful and green, and then this is just autumn gorgeousness. I think I'm going to have to give it to the autumn vibes because this is a very monochromatic palette. While I did really like this palette, it is a little limiting in what you can create. And this one, there's a lot more possibilities. I love that red. I love these mix of tones for very pretty type of neutral fall looks. And the formula of the mattes is amazing. I would say the shimmers between these 2 palettes, I enjoyed the Colored Rain one more. It just, you know, kind of stands out and has more sparkle than the Nomad, but the Nomads were still pretty. They just had a more subtleness to them, which kind of went with the theme of the palette. But just there's more variety in here. Obviously, it's a much bigger palette, so a little bit of a, you know, I'm sorry, Colored Rain, you didn't stand a chance, but I'm gonna go for the Hudson Valley because I really did like this palette. I promise you guys, I didn't like think through the stack and decide what I was gonna vote on and then give you guys my guess, because so far the end of the year is totally winning, and I said I thought the end of the year was gonna win. I promise you, I didn't like think this through. I was just put them in a pile, just thinking back, not even looking at the palettes. I was thinking back over the year and just knowing how many palettes I enjoyed at the latter half. That's why I gave the guess, but I feel like it's looking like I cheated, but I promise you I didn't. Anyway, first half of the year, the Saints Angel Center Cosmetics Get Lucky palette comes in and battles against the Kaleidos The Escape Pod palette, which looks like this. And honestly, I'm going to give it to the Escape Pod palette. The Saint Angel Centers palette was really nice. It's an all shimmer palette, and while I did really enjoy these colors, this color story is also really fun with the purples, the pinks, and the oranges. I feel like the shimmers between these 2, I prefer the ones in the Saint Angel Centers, but also I feel like the history, or like just all the drama from last year around this brand really does put a hamper on things when I think about this brand, or I want to talk about this brand. It just, if you don't know what happened, a lot went down. I've been thinking about like sharing a video because I don't think there's any videos on YouTube about it. So if you don't know what's going on or didn't see all of the Instagram stories, and there were a lot of them, you might not know what's going on. But the brand owner, the way she handled some things and treated some people wasn't the best. Not to go down a whole rabbit trail there, but I'm gonna pick the Kaleidos Escape Pod palette and escape that situation. I
I tried to make a pun and I don't think that landed, but anyway. Let me know if you'd like to hear a video on this because I have a lot of thoughts. It's been a long while. I've been wanting to just like observe and see if any resolution came, because that's always my hope. I hope things resolve and everything has a happy ending, but so far there's not a happy ending. Okay, moving on. Menagerie Sugar High palette. I tried at the beginning of the year. This color story was a lot of fun. That's going against the Oden's Eye Solomane 2 palette. Ooh, oh no, I made a mess of this. Oh, my palettes are so messy. The move, every time I move, it's just such a traumatizing experience for my palettes. Anyway, these are the two palettes, and actually they're not that similar, but they have those same kind of tones about them when it comes to like the pinks and purples. I feel like they're very similar in that aspect, but they're very different also. Ooh, this is hard because I love the shimmers in the Menagerie palette, but I love the mattes in this palette more because there's more depth in here, but the shimmers in here are very light and kind of iridescent, whereas the shimmers in here, some are multi-chromes and they just pack more of a punch. So this is really hard, and both color stories are fantastic. There wasn't enough depth in the Sugar High palette, so I think that's going to make the Solomane 2 win out because I love depth. I gotta have depth. If I don't have depth in the outer corner, I just don't love a look as much as I could. So I'm going to give it to the Solomane 2, even though, like I said, the shimmers in the Sugar High palette were fantastic, and I absolutely loved them. This hot pink shimmer, oh my goodness, just such an intense hot pink shimmer. It was gorgeous, but I have to give it to the Solomane 2. Okay, next up, beginning half of the year, I tried the Playing and Makeup by Yolanda Basic palette, which is an all matte, beautiful, intense color story. And that's going to battle against the Secret Gardens palette by Colored Rain. This is really hard. Both of them are all matte. Isn't that fun? And one's a 5-pan and one's a 6-pan. Very close and similar. Ooh, this is hard. But I'm going to give it to kind of like my OG love when it comes to colors. Yes, I love color and I love to play with the rainbow, but there's something about a grungy, kind of foresty, kind of earthy vibes that I just love. Foresty, I guess, is the best way to describe it because these tones just is something special to me. I love it, and anytime I do a look with it, I'm just always so happy with the look. So as much as I love an all like bold, colorful rainbow look, this just speaks to me in a way that the bold, colorful rainbow, they're fun, but it doesn't speak to me the same way that the earthy kind of nature foresty vibes do. So I'm gonna give it to the Secret Garden palette. I love this so much. Quality of both of these were like totally amazing. Love them both, but that foresty vibe, that grungy vibe wins out. Okay, another Playing and Makeup by Yolanda palette. I think this one's pretty messy. Let me see. Ugh, I'm going to leave it closed. This is the Friends palette. Hopefully you guys can see through there. But that's going to battle against the Colored Rain Queen Bee palette. Ooh, another tough one. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is so hard. This is so hard. Let me think. I really like these grungy vibes, and I love this shimmer. I mean, the dark shimmer was fine, but it's just a very dark shimmer, so I kind of used it as an outer corner deepening color. So pretty, but oh my goodness, these tones are beautiful. I really love that yellow in it, and it's got just a solid black. This is so hard, but I think thinking back over the looks and like looking at them saying like which one would you want to recreate a look with first, I'm going to give it to the Queen Bee because the Queen Bee, these tones, these colors, I picked this so many times when I just want a quick look and I don't have I didn't have a new palette to reach for, especially because I finished trying this around when my baby arrived, and then afterwards I just didn't have time to think about reaching for new palettes. And anytime I try a new palette, I want to make sure I take pictures of the looks and stuff. So on the day-to-day, I knew I wasn't going to be taking pictures and documenting things. I reach for this palette a lot, so gonna give it to the Queen Bee. Okay, next up is the Playing and Makeup by Yolanda. Again, I think this is the last little palette that I tried. This is the Mixture palette. Again, a bit messy. I'm definitely leaving this closed because it got shattered for the umpteenth time during the move. But that's going against the Makeup and Cocktail Cosmetics Anna Jean palette. Oh, this is just like not even fair. Like, how do I compare these two? This is so large, like the possibilities are literally endless. Oh my goodness, but you know what, I'm gonna have to give it to the Playing and Makeup by Yolanda palette because this obviously is the top one out of all the palettes I tried, these little 5-pan palettes, but this dark one that's currently shattered is a multi-chrome that is stunning, and then these mattes are just amazing. They're so intense and beautiful. I created so many looks with this and just absolutely loved each and every one of them. I created all matte looks. I used shimmers. It's just stunning. The formula of the matte and shimmer are amazing. And while this is really pretty and you got tons of options and whatnot, when you think about the formulas, and yes, I could get more creativity here. The formula of this and the type of looks that I got with this just stand out in my mind so much. And also with it being only 5 pans, I got a lot of creativity and a lot of different looks out of it. I feel like I did like 6 looks, and I don't think any of them were very repetitive to the last. So I love that about it. So a little unusual for me to pick a small palette over a big palette with more color options, but I'm gonna pick the Mixture palette. Gonna make a note right here. I ranked mom brain for sure. I ranked the Nomad Fêtes de Provence palette
in both halves of the year, because I totally blanked right before I took my break and I ranked all the palettes of the first half of the year, and I did that video. I put it in there because I was just like, I just finished trying this. I haven't technically reviewed it, but I already know where I'm going to place it. So I included it in that. And then going into December, totally forgot about that. And I was, getting all the palettes that I tried, and I reviewed that one after, after the baby came. And so I grabbed the Fietes de Provence and ranked it in that half. So I have it in both palettes. So honestly, I was like, what am I going to do? So anyway, I decided to just do it for the first half of the year, and I'm going to rank it where I placed it for the first half of the year. And let's just pretend I didn't rank it also in the second half of the year. And let's everyone just forget about mom brain Katie moment there, that I ranked the same palette twice during the year 2022. Honestly, you don't have to forget about it, because that sounds like a very typical Katie thing to do. But anyway, moving on. Just want to address that here because that's where I placed it in my ranking for the latter half. I placed it right here. But we're going to keep going because I rank it a little bit later in the first half. But just wanted to address that. If you're watching both videos and going, Katie? Yeah. Okay, first half of the year, Profusion Desert Sage palette, and that's going against the Give Me Glow Nightlife palette. Ooh, this is going to be interesting because the Nightlife palette is like all the blues and greens you could want, and the Desert Sage is very different and very difficult. I feel like this is a no-brainer. I love the creativity I could get with the Profusion palette, but the pan shapes are a big downer, and then there's the shimmers are just okay. They get the job done, but the mattes are really nice. I was very impressed with the mattes, but the pan shape, the palette size, it's not going to compete with this palette. I really did enjoy this color story. The formula was very nice. The shimmers were a little bit messy, and messy as in like as you wear them, they get everywhere. They weren't really messy to apply that I remember, but they were very pretty. Lots of sparkle. That was very nice. And yeah, I added a black to this palette to make it the perfect me palette, but it's like a single eyeshadow palette, so you could easily put a black in there. So anyway, in my head, this one just ranks supreme because I just really enjoyed the colors or the type of looks that I got, and they just kind of embodied the cover of this palette so well. So I have to give it to the Give Me Glow Nightlife or Teal Nightlife palette. Next up for the first half is the Kylove Beauty Art Nouveau palette. And this is, I think, my first video I'm doing after Kylove just announced that they're closing. And I'm not really handling it well because I think that's such a shame. The brand was just so amazing and unique in the indie makeup world. I'm really sad to see them closing because like they brought something really different with the whole art aspect to their brand. But anyway, that's going to be battled against the Ace Beauté Paletopoly palette. Oh, I really like, but obviously we're getting to the top. So all these palettes I really did like. But as I battle it out, I gotta give it to the Paletopoly palette. This palette is just so good. The variety that you could get. I felt so creative with this palette. I like that you got bold color, like intense bold color, but you also got grunge and you got neutral and you also got colorful. The shimmers and matte formula were just outstanding. This palette, I really did enjoy the kind of, colorful rainbow-esque to it, but I like the creativity it could get with the different shimmers and mattes. But the matte formula was a little lacking on some of these shadows. The shimmers in this palette were just nice. They definitely don't hold a candle to the Ace Beauté, so it's very easy and quick, and I feel a little bit bad since I know that Kylove is shutting down, but I gotta give it to the Paletopoly palette, and I'm just going to tap this down and pretend I didn't just gouge it out with my nail, but yeah, Paletopoly. Alright, next up is going to be the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette, and that is battling against the latter half of the year, the Nomad Cloud Force Monteverde, I don't know how to say. I'm so bad. I'm so sorry. But this palette. So let's see. Let me open them both up. We have the Kaleidos, which is such a fun color story. I really did like this. And that's going against this rainbowness of goodness. Ooh, this is hard. But I'm going to have to give it to the rainbow palette. The intensity of these mattes were just so fun. I like that I could get nice depth, and I loved all the shimmers in this palette. They were so beautiful. And this one, I really like the uniqueness of this color story, and the matte formula was amazing, and the shimmers were pretty, just messy. I really did enjoy this palette, and it's got a heavy emphasis on green, which I know is influencing me a little bit, but I really did like the grungy greens in here. Sitting here having to decide, I'm going to give it to the Monteverde palette, because while they both were fantastic, this has just a little bit more colorful options to it. Alright, next up for the first half of the year is the Hella or Hila Beauty Odense and Angelica Hila or Hella palette. I said that very weird, I'm sorry. That is battling against Blend Bunny Cosmetics Primal palettes. This is a tough one. Oh my goodness. This is hard. I love the rainbow aspect. I love the depth. I love the the grunge with this palette, the Primal palette. It's so beautiful, but there was definitely a few like, that I didn't love about this palette. Like the top row was a little disappointing. The shimmers are nice, but you know, they were very deep and they didn't blow my socks off. Whereas over here, I really did love this color story, and I loved, I think all the colors. One or two was maybe a little bit crummy. I think I remember, or like crummy, a little bit flaky. I think I remember the pink one not being my favorite. I used it once and didn't use it again, but everything else was fantastic. And they did have a double-sided, a multi-chrome in here as well, which was fun. Ooh, what am I gonna do? You know what, I gotta pick the Primal palette. When I'm looking at both of these, yes, I love the uniqueness of this color story, but I really did like just the rainbow aspect and the grungy rainbow with the Primal palette. I love that very grunge darkness to the rainbow. You guys know I like my depth when I'm gonna do a look, so I'm gonna give it to the Primal palette. All right, next up, first half of the year, the Snow Whistler Lodge got a very high spot in my ranking. Really did love this palette. It was fantastic, such a good quality and just so fun. That's going against the Christmas Eve palette by Odin's Eye Cosmetics. Ooh, these are both cool toned. Isn't that fun? Let me open them correctly. Ooh, this is hard. Because right off the bat, I love both of these matte formulas. They're both fantastic. So the shimmers are really, in the color stories where it's gonna kind of determine which one I drop and which one I keep. Because the color stories, which one do I love more? I really like the uniqueness of this because it kind of stretched me and like made me create a lot of really fun, unique looks. And there's more options, I feel like, in this palette to get more different looks than the Nomad palette. It felt a little limiting, I remember. Probably because it has more shimmers than mattes. But the shimmers in here were very chunky. I liked some of them, but the majority of them were just a little flaky, too flaky for my preference. But it does have a multi-chrome in here. These have some, I think, duochromes in here, if I remember correctly, like iridescent duochromes. Man, this is hard. I'm going to give it to the Nomad Snow Whistler Lodge, I think, because like I said, very similar color story, so I like that about it, but there were just a few other things in here that I didn't love. The yellow in here was a little weird, whereas this palette I feel like overall is a lot more solid as a whole. Like it was a little limiting with having more shimmers than mattes, but that was about it. Whereas this, like I said, it's flaky, the yellow was a little weird, that type of thing, but I really do like both palettes, so this really hurts me to say, but I am going to give it to the Snow Whistler Lodge. Okay, so at this point, this is where I ranked the Fillettes de Provence from Nomad Cosmetics in my beginning half of 2022. So this palette was just so much fun, and that's going to go against the Merry Christmas palette from Odin's Eye. This is a hard one. Let me open it up here. Ooh, this is hard. Because I feel like it's a no-brainer. I really like this color story, but the Fillettes de Provence just, I love it for the softness and just the differentness about it. Like there's just something so special about this palette. It's the palette that I can't get off my mind, I feel like is the best way to describe it. I remember trying it and going like, okay, that's cool. And then, you know, moving on, I remember liking it a lot more than I thought I would. Because when I first opened this, I was like, okay, I'm not going to love that because it's like pink and purple. But then I used it and I was like, I really like this. And then ever since then, anytime I think back to this palette, I just got such a sweet spot for it. So it hurts me a little bit, but when I'm looking at both of these palettes, I really do love the color story of the Merry Christmas palette. I love the greens in here with the reds, the different, you know, colors that I could combine. I got really very Christmas, obviously Christmas looks, but I got grungy looks, I got neutral looks, I got colorful looks. I love the orange in here. It's got a multi-chrome in here. It has a hot pink in here. There's so much about this palette. Obviously, I ranked it high in my countdown from the whole year. It ranked at a very high spot. If you missed it, I'll leave it linked down below where it got in the ranking, and you could see me creating another look with it because that's how much I love this palette. So while this has a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings for me, this one, I love it a little bit more. So I'm gonna have to give it to the Merry Christmas palette and not to the Fillettes de Provence. I had to choose. This is hard because I really do like this palette. This is the palette I feel like that just, I gotta find a special spot for it back there because I don't want to forget about it, and I like to look back at it and think about all the fun looks I got, because the looks that I got from this palette, they're different from me and I really like them. All right, next up for the beginning half, I tried the Nomad, what is this called? Paradise Islands palette, which is like this, a perfect little spring palette is what I called it. That's going against the Simply Posh Cosmetics Genuine Gems palette. Oh, this is hard. Well, it's hard because I don't want to drop one because I really like them both, but I'm gonna have to give it to the Genuine Gems because look at this depth, richness, and just gorgeousness that is the Genuine Gems. I love the Paradise Islands as well, but it's a great kind of springtime palette. It's very soft. There's not a whole lot of depth in it. It's very soft and summery. And if I have to pick springtime or fall time-esque vibes, I'm going to pick fall time-esque vibes every time. So gotta give it to Genuine Gems. Oh, this is even harder. This is the, of course it is, we're at the number 2 stage. This is the Playing in Makeup by Yolando Color Scheme Pro 777 palette. I really did like this, ranked it in my top 5 from last year out of all the palettes that I tried, but it's battling against the Simply Posh Cosmetics Fairy Tale Fairies palette, which I also love a whole lot. And if you saw my ranking for the top 5, this probably comes as no surprise, but I have to give it to the Simply Posh Fairy Tale Fairies palette because in my 2022 ranking of all the palettes I tried during the year, this one won on top of this one. So as much as it hurts for me to drop this palette and how beautiful it is and how much green it has in it and how beautiful the shimmers were and all that, I gotta give it to the Fairy Tale Fairies palette because I love this color story. I love the matte formula. The shimmer formula is very pretty as well. I'm sorry, Playing in Makeup by Yolando, but this is going out. Okay, coming at number 1 spot, this is obviously going to be hard. Beginning half of the year, I gave it to Blend Bunny Cosmetics Blends palette. Such a fantastic all matte rainbow palette. It's amazing, but that's battling against the Cosmic Brushes Serenity palette. And as I said, I tried a lot of amazing palettes at the latter half of the year. This one was number 1 from, you know, the latter half of the year, but it also got number 1 from the whole year. So it probably comes as no surprise, but I love my Serenity palette and I cannot drop it. So I'm going to have to drop the Blend Bunny Blends palette. I'm so sorry, but hey, I kept the Primal one. Funny how that works out, but at least I kept one of the Blend Bunny Cosmetics palettes because I really do like them. This palette is so good, so nice, but this color story is amazing, the matte formula is amazing, the shimmer formula is amazing, and the looks that I got from it, I think I created over 10 looks because I did a reel recently where I think it was 9 or 10 looks that I showed, like all the pictures that I took creating looks with it, but there were many looks that I did that I didn't get pictures of it. So a palette that I can create well over 10 eye looks out of it and not be bored and still want to go back to it, that tells you all you need to know. I absolutely love it, even though I also created a ton with my Blend Bunny Blends. But anyway, just for this video, gotta give it to the Serenity palette, and I'm so sorry, Blends palette. Okay. Do I need to even sit here and count? No, not really, because I can just go to the latter half of the year. These are the only palettes I picked for the first half of the year. I only picked 4 palettes. All the other palettes, 26 I think is how many, 25, 26 palettes that I battled today in this video. Let me see if I can pick it up without dropping them all. Ooh, I forgot how close quarters this is, my bad. But they all are from the latter half of the year. So, like I was saying in the beginning, I didn't want to get a tie. I definitely didn't get anywhere close to a tie. So there you go. First time doing this that I didn't tie it. But the latter half of 2022 was just so good. I feel bad for all the palettes I tried in the beginning half, especially towards the top because they were amazing. But 2022, man, the end of 2022 just was so many winners for me. All right, so now that I have a mess of palettes down below me, I have so much eyeshadow on my lap, my fingers are a mess, that's gonna do it for today's video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. With all that said, that is gonna do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video as always. This is a fun video I look forward to doing at the end of the year. It's always at the beginning in January for me, but getting to go back and revisit all the palettes one last time and battle them out together, I love doing this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, with all that said, that is gonna do it for me. Thank you guys so very much for watching. As always, I'm over on Instagram, LadyKatie92 over there if you want to follow me. I post reels, up close eye pictures. I share in my stories about my daily life, all that sort of thing. And with all that said, I'll see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye guys.